and the activity is framed in, I feel, in the book as the bondage of self. So the activity of the mental state, that narration going on, being so sure we know a lot of shit when we don't know anything, all that stuff. And so the talks and everything about the steps and the principles and the suggestions are trying to be framed from this point of the exact nature of the wrong, which I believe it's an identification, an act of being identified as the disease, really, basically. And so when you're identified as that which is causing irritability, restlessness, and discontent, our our hoping or wanting to be free is severely handcuffed because we want to be free as that we want to be free from. So it defeats us in quite a lot of ways. And so today I just was rushing through some of the statements and how it works. This is not going to be an in-depth study of the book. I'm more interested in seeing what we're not, because a big event in my recovery was when I had the opportunity, the privilege to share and lead these fourth step workshops for quite a while. And so I looked at how it works quite a lot. And there was a statement on page 64 that I had read many, many times. But the beauty about the big book is that it's a living book in a sense. We're going to see things in it that we didn't see before. The print hasn't changed, but how we read it does. And that means that actually shows us the growth, to tell you the truth, because more gets revealed through the same vehicle so the words, we're not adding pages or illustrations or everything like that, but there's a lot of adding on to what's available in the book by the people who are reading it and who are living this process. So to me, that's the point, is that sense of being free from something that we felt we were bonded to. And when we have relief from that bondage, the relief tells us the diagnosis was correct. Yeah? By the relief, you'll know the problem from the solution in a sense. So by taking it, looking at this way, it was very important because how it works, a lot of the sentences in there are framed with being convinced. And this was the same. It was on page 64, I think it's the third paragraph. And it was being convinced that self, and this is important because a lot of people I meet believe self is like the ego. But I don't see it that way. I see self is a sense that's produced by the mental state. So the mental state is interpreting and narrating what's happening to have it based on something, all of it's happening either from me or to me. So it's a self-centered interpretation. And so we like to get relief from the effects of that system, but we're not, the real relief is from the center of the system, the idea of self. So it says being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. That's the statement that I feel is the precursor to getting to the exact nature of the wrong. So when I'm in the present state of being convinced that self, and I'm seeing self as a foreign agent or a parasitical movement or an act of being mistakenly identified with something that we're not. You can call it a lot of ways, but I really like us to see it as other because that's where the possibility lies. So being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. So that's the statement that you're meant to sit with for a while and see if it's true or not. And it says, if you are convinced of that, we are now going to look at its common manifestation. So basically, it's the requirement entering into the fourth step. Because in this way, I'm looking at the fourth step as seeing how self has defeated me by its manifestations in my life. Yeah, and how self has such carte blanche entrance in my life is quite intriguing to me, because you can cut out, you can get over resentments, but what's causing the resentments, we're not getting over. Yeah, so therefore, they're going to be more situations are going to be seen as threats, and all this bullshit is just constantly keep producing the same effects, because there isn't a certain amount of resentments out there. There aren't a certain quota of fear. It's how we see things, yeah? And if we're seeing life from this idea of self, we're going to see through that seeing is going to produce like a petri dish for its manifestations, which is the first one is resentment. So some of the common manifestations of self in our life is resentment, fears, and harming other people in the pursuit of what we want. And then, therefore, we look at our sexual behavior, because that's quite an important topic, to see how we'll hurt people in the pursuit of what we want. So by recognizing the manifestations as selves, there's a lot of relief for us. And it says, being convinced that self manifested in various ways has defeated us. It separates two. It separates that two. Yeah. Now, when we're identified as self, we call it us. Yeah. We call it me. That's the bondage of self. It's an act of being identified. So here in how it works, it goes, this is the one word I would change in the big book. It says, remember that we deal with alcohol, bottom of page 58, cunning, baffling, powerful. I don't believe alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, to tell you the truth. I think alcoholism is cunning, powerful, yeah, but not alcohol. And then I'd like to go to the three things at the end of how it works, that the A, B, and C, that we were alcoholic. And this is also we need to be convinced of these three things, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. Now, when I came into AA, when I was introduced to the first step, I believed that a lot of my behavior was based on my drinking and my drug use. And I was really surprised when I exhibited the same behavior when I stopped drinking and using. That was one of the first rude awakenings. And this idea that we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, I had done that many, many times to get alcohol. So I like this one a lot better, that saying that we have to admit to our innermost selves, or we actually have to allow life to admit to our innermost selves, because we're not going to admit to our innermost selves. But in my experience, life did. The higher power intervened in me and bypassed where the problem resides, which is the head, and went somewhere. I don't know its location, but let's call it the innermost self. And I was suddenly struck sober, and the establishment of the being struck sober was just that. I was powerless over alcohol and drugs, and basically the unmanageability of my life was produced by me trying to manage it. That's how I saw it. So I'm a real believer in that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives, that probably no human power. So why does our life become unmanageable? We're not accepting that fact. We're still trying to manage our own lives. That's what makes it unmanageable. Yeah. The unmanageability comes from where we're trying to manage it from. Yeah. And then it says probably no human power could have relieved the alcoholism. That I have an intimate experience with that. I wanted to relieve me of myself out from alcoholism. My mother wanted to, the state wanted to. No human power and no consequence could do it. I mean, I got run over twice in one night by the same car. I've been shot at. I've been fucking put in jail. I've been subdued. I've been straitjacketed. Nothing could stop me. As soon as I got out of those circumstances, I got loaded again. It was incredible. And that God could and would if he was sought. That's the whole point. Yeah. You admit that you're not managerial quality. Therefore, you're open for a new managerial team to come in. And what establishes the new managerial team are the steps, and especially the working steps 4 through 9. What gives life to the third step is the working steps. 4 through 9 gives life and blood to the third step. Yeah. So then it goes here, the first requirement. Now this is incredible because there's a lot of requirements in the big book, yeah? They're said in a lot of ways, suggestions and stuff like that. There's a lot of requirements of being convinced. But here says the first requirement is that we been convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Now I see that as a foreign will. I don't see self-will as my will. Yeah? This is from the basis of what I have been shown is the root of the problem. Self-will is not my will. Yeah. My life has been run by a foreign agent or a foreign pathogen. So the requirement is that I am convinced that any life run by this foreign pathogens can hardly be a success. Now the possibility of being free from it is available because I'm very clear that I'm not it. Yeah. This is what was handcuffing me. As long as I kept calling the disease me, I was trying to be free as me. And I was running into that statement, self can't get out of self. It's just that simple. So when there was a recognition, what's driving me crazy isn't me. Yeah? It's a foreign pathogen. And the reason why it's found such a hospitable condition is I'm identified as it. The host has taken itself to be the parasite. And it migrates from active addiction to recovery from active addiction. The identification doesn't get stopped when you stop drinking and using. It migrates into whatever environment we bring it to, and then it turns the environment sour and acidic. That's what it does. Wherever it shows up, it turns it acidic and sour because that's what it thrives on. So if you think a relationship's going to save your ass, it's going to be the thing that's going to bring you to another downfall. Yeah? If it's directed by self. So being convinced we're at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. We decided, but we couldn't finish the job because our will and life was taken over by the parasite. That's why we do step 4 through 9. If our will and life was ours and under our control, it would be a 3-step program. You admit you were fucked. You would realize you don't need to be fucked. And then you turn your will and life over so it wouldn't be fucked. But that doesn't work because we're occupied. We don't understand that something has us. We actually call that which has us, we say we have it. Yeah? As if we have the disease. The disease has us. It's different. Your idea that you have alcoholism means like you could not have alcoholism. It implies a certain choice that isn't available. Alcoholism has you. So being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided. So hopefully I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And by looking at the first few steps, I've realized the culprit. I realized I have been taken over by something that has, and my dilemma is powerlessness. Yeah. I can't get out from underneath it. Yeah. Its strategy has been so successful. I'm living my life as the parasite. I'll get a resentment at a rehab where everyone's only trying to help me and storm out because I'm being driven by the parasite. So you're there willing to, they say you got to be willing to save your ass instead of your face, but most of us in the beginning, we think our face is our ass. We think this image of the parasite is us, and we're willing to throw our fucking life away to be right about that. This is a hostile takeover, yeah? And first of all, we gotta, it's like sort of like we have the judo hold on it. I have alcoholism. Look at it. I have alcoholism. No, it has you in a fucking headlock. Yeah. So let's be clear. So the first week, so what, here we go. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? And here's this is to me, the biggest unspoken step of the whole program. Yeah. When he starts describing this whole thing, and it leads to, hey, perhaps there, first of all, we got to quit playing God. So what it does is it goes into this whole idea of selfishness, self-centeredness driving us, and then it uncovers the idea that it's only self-will when I'm doing bad shit. No, self-will is being used and hiding out in virtue and fucking consideration and compassion. It's there before both of those expressions. Yeah, it goes through 2 paragraphs of it. It says, and of course it runs into that basic, the biggest delusion of all is that we can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if we only manage it better. Yeah? So I believe they were so close. They were describing the activity of the exact nature of the wrong, but they didn't catch the exact nature of the wrong. They used the word self constantly as the problem, as the root of the problem, and they see its activity, which is self-will, self-centeredness, self-fear, all that. But they don't see the modus operandi is the act of being identified as it. Yeah? The host is taking itself to be the parasite. That severely limits the solution's effect in our lives. So he goes here, our actor is self-centered, egocentric. It goes on and on with this stuff. So this is another thing I don't agree with. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. That would be true if you were the parasite. Yeah? If you believed that you were the parasite, this is the only conclusion you could arrive at the end, which is the troubles are basically my own making, because you're identified as that which is making the troubles. Yeah? This is where I see a difference. This is where I see a difference. I don't believe that the troubles we're in are basically of our own making. I don't see it that way. I don't. Yeah? Because the troubles I'm in now are totally different than the troubles I were in when I was in active addiction and alcoholism. I'll tell you that much. Yeah? A completely different spectrum of troubles. So I'm not a believer in that. If you see it from the way I'm sharing it, you'll recognize what's producing the trouble in you and from you isn't you. And you can be relieved of that. You cannot be relieved from self as self. You can be relieved from self. Yeah? You can be relieved from self, but you can't be relieved from self as self. So the root of the problem is the act of being identified with the problem. So we're always breathing life to it. Even after it's been so clear, your whole life has seemingly been destroyed, and we go into AA, and AA resurrects our life and stuff like that, and the parasite is still going along with us. It's still claiming all the behavior it was producing while you were out there using it and calling it your behavior. And now you're carrying around tons of guilt and shame based on the activities or behaviors you expressed while under the influence, and you haven't gotten the relief from seeing that you were totally powerless over it. You haven't seen it yet. Because it's still harvesting chains and links for more chain on you. So yeah, you have the possibility today to be free from its effects, but you're still at the effects of its yesterday. It's producing tons of guilt and shame based on you were the doer of shit you had nothing fucking to do with. Something had you and used you for transportation. And if you don't believe it, just take all these unique squares here. We all end up at the same 3 parking spaces. The same driver drove each and one of these squares to the same place. It says recognize the similarities, not the difference. The similarity is one thing has taken all of us over. Why are we missing that similarity? One thing has taken all of us over. So this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. So obviously, something's playing God. Or why would he say that? Yes? I mean, obviously, part of the exam has recognized something's freaking playing God, and that's the first requirement. That's like the most important thing. Quit playing God. Now, this is where I see how the system, the parasite, keeps breathing life into it. Because the parasite is thinking it's that which is hearing the statement, quit playing God. So then that which is playing God, the parasite tries to quit playing God. That's playing God ad infinitum. That which is playing God cannot quit playing God. You see, you're not that which is playing God, and that's God. You see that which is playing God from God. You see from the higher power, and you see the lower power has been playing God. And then you lose interest in the lower power, and that's the quitting of playing God. Yeah? Because it's our God juice the lower power is using to play God with. This is all coming from relief. This isn't like an idea I had and then I created a philosophy. This came out of seeing things, yeah, and getting relief from that which I was not knowing was going on. Just like in that statement on page 52 and 53 in We Agnostics, page 53, it says without knowing it. Mostly that's the case of someone in active addiction and alcoholism. They're not knowing what's going on. So the shit keeps going on, of course, because we don't get to the exact nature of the wrong. So it says here on that page 53, I love it, without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith. Yes, that's the statement in the fear inventory. Perhaps there's a better way. Instead of trusting something finite, which is self, we're going to trust something infinite. Trust is another name for faith, yes? So we have been in a condition without knowing it that we've had a lot of faith in what we're not. We have had a lot of faith in the parasite. The problem resides in the mind. We have had faith in the narration, in the forecasting, in the back going over the past and worrying about the future. We've had abject faith in that, and that's why we're in the condition we're in. So without knowing it, have we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? So right now, we're all brought to where we're sitting. Most of us aren't standing by a certain kind of faith right now. We are now observing and expressing the results of a faith being lifted off of the parasite and brought to the infinite power. We're luxuriating in the result of that. The same energy, but if it's what's directing the energy is going to produce the effects from it, yeah? If self has all your faith, it's going to fuck us. Literally, over and over. If that same faith is put in the infinite higher power, you'll have an ease and comfort right now. So he goes, I love this one because he goes, for did we not believe in our own reasoning? It's not your reasoning, bro. It's the reasoning of a fucking parasite. It's infected the thought system. The problem resides in the mind. It's an activity. Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of faith? Yet we have been faithful, abjectly faithful to the God of reason. That's the fucking parasite playing God. We've been calling the parasite the God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved all the time. Did you know that? Did you know that faith has been involved all the time? That's a power we all are, is faith. Not a faith, faith. And that power is being directed by something. We had total faith in the parasite's view, and now we've outgrown that parasite's view, so we're in the process of outgrowing fear and outgrowing resentment because they're fed by that parasite's view. That's what feeds fear and resentment, is the view of the parasite. Now another way of seeing is occurring. Now we're seeing it from the higher power. So quit playing God, it doesn't work. Good luck. What happens when you see the third step in our community, the parasite do the third step? It's a transactional deal. It's like a big kid has a bag of candy. He goes to the small kid in the park, says, here, hold this bag of candy. And then anytime it wants, it says, fuck that, give me that bag of candy. So it's like transactional. I'm going to surrender everything but not getting a girlfriend or whatever. And then the shit hits the fan, and we are lucky if we're brought back to the point of surrender. Some people miss the bus, yeah? But we brought back to the surrender. Oh, I surrender, but it's all transactional. I surrender if I get a date or a parking space or shit like that. Yeah? That's when the third step is done from the parasite. So the whole, the main principle of AA is that's turning one's will and life over to the care of the higher power. But preceded by that is the primary point, which is there's got to be a quit playing God. We've got to see the disease as what we're not. Yeah. I've been here for like 32 years in recovery in the community. I've watched a lot of people. There is something going on without a lot of us knowing it. We have been misplaced by something. Something is basically parading around our life and calling it us, yeah? And even when you meet it inside, you call it me, yeah? That's the freedom from the bondage of self, that you're not self, yeah? The bondage of self, the bondage isn't you and then bondage in self. The bondage of self is after. The self is the bondage, yes? There's not you bonded to self. Self is the bondage. So, and this is just one member's eye view of what I think the exact nature of the wrong is. And then what I've done is I see everything presented in recovery based on that view of the exact nature of the wrong. So when it says you have to abandon yourself to God, I see self as something else, yeah, which you can do. You can abandon something other than you to someone, but you can't abandon you. You'd still be there, yeah? So you're abandoning something that's not of you over. Yeah. Let go of all your old ideas. The result will be nil. Well, to me, the oldest idea is you, basically. So, yeah, that's it, I think, today.
Wow. Okay. Thanks very much. We'll go straight to the questions. We've got a couple of hands up. Kaiser, I'm unmuting you, mate. There you go.
Hey there, hey everybody. I spent a long time trying to ask this question. I think, or trying to formulate the question. A lot of stuff. Kind of simple. So I'm going to go with it. I think you kind of already addressed it, which would make me not want to ask the question. But I have a tendency. I have a tendency to interpret what someone says, and then I may interpret it and not actually hear what was said. So that's why I'm asking this question. It might be reviewing what you already said. So I'm okay, just to warn you. My question is there a solution in the 12 steps for selfing?
Yes.
It sounded like the action steps 4 through 9 can potentially show us that. It can potentially show us that we're not the self. That's what it sounded like to me.
No, the higher power shows you.
Okay.
You're not the self. Not 4 through 9.
Okay. The higher power shows us that. I'll have
through
to
4 through 9, the higher power may show it, but 4 through 9 doesn't have the ability to do anything. It's the higher power and 4 through 9. Yeah.
So the higher power, like the action steps 4 through 9, we start to discover, hopefully, that we're not that. And then the higher power, the grace will come in and then do the work or do the, like have the thing happen where we can see that we're not the self. Am I accurate? Okay.
Well, you're going to see, the point is you see that you're not the self all day.
Right.
Really.
Okay.
You just haven't, you need a little bit of a key to recognize it. But you're seeing you're not the self all day. It's just not getting through to the right mail slot. Yeah. The selfing is let's say misrouting the message. Yeah. Yeah.
And that comes through the act of grace. That key is the act of grace that you can't do yourself. Am I correct or not?
Yeah, and the act of grace is this grace. There's no act of grace. There's grace.
Okay.
It's available at all times.
Really
grace
hard.
Aren't, but grace is available at all times, of course.
It's just so tricky to see it from the self, which is kind of the whole point. So I'm giving it. I'm trying to do the work, and we'll see.
Yes.
We'll see how we go.
Just do the work. Don't try to do the work. Do the work.
Okay.
And let go of the results, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
Yeah. See, there's a statement in A Vision for Us, A Vision for You, that this power is going to constantly reveal to us more and more. Yeah. That's been my experience.
Okay.
Yeah. Work is important, and then but it's not always important. Yeah. If you read about the effects when you get around page 84 and something, all this shit's starting to pop with no thought or effort on your part. Yeah. So your role has been minimized. The more, see, when you come in, you got the big role. And as you stay in the program, your role gets more minimal as you go along. So you lose interest in the character that thinks it's on this, heroic journey.
Right. And then the last piece before I go, how to navigate this in conventional AA. And it sounded like you said seeing the self as not you. Whenever you see the self, that was kind of the key to how to do this in the conventional
Well,
AA.
you don't really do it.
Okay.
This is the point. All we're trying to do is get something in there, and then you'll see what happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, we really want to bypass the one that is very curious of how to do it. We want to bypass that. Really. It's sort of like you want to send that out around the corner for as long as possible, so something can actually get established. See? See, I know it always looks like you have a lot to do with it, but that view's going to change over time. Just stay on the operating table. Don't get up. Don't play doctor, and things are going to go pretty good. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. But as long as you see, like when I came into recovery, I was so I it seemed like the thief was recognized, and then the thief put on a new uniform called the policeman, and then I was under like my own policeman's probation for 5 years. I didn't trust myself as far as I could throw myself. And there was a great relief when that policeman was seen as part of the problem also. The parasite's like a shapeshifter, really. Yeah, it'll play a lot of roles. It's like Dracula, getting a Facebook page to go hunt vampires. Yeah, it's sort of like that. It will get into the whole thing of, oh yes, let's destroy self, vanquish self, but it's self.
Is intuition
So,
an aid? And isn't
I,
intuition an aid in doing this
huh?
stuff? Is intuition an aid
Oh
in
yes, of
okay.
course.
Okay.
Everything. Uh, well, I can't say everything, but a lot of the qualities that appear before thought are very sound. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm worried about that shit that comes after you've thought about it. Really. Yeah, so it says you'll get a sense of all this happening. Yeah. You don't realize, well, maybe you do. It's a done deal, bro. Yeah, you're already sober. You never have to go. You never not have to be sober again. I mean, you just, yeah. It's over. The gig's up. You're talking about grace. You're riding the like the wave of grace now. Grace has already erupted in your life. Yeah, yeah. When you've lived under a lower power, you think it's a huge power. But when a higher power shows up, you really see how small, and you just see its smallness in all of its little glory. Yeah. And yeah, whatever. I don't go to AA meetings and share this. Yeah. I speak from it, and then it infuses whatever I'm sharing with something. Yeah. That's how it goes. But the days of being proselytizing left a long time ago. Yeah. People are going to do what they do with the message, but I believe we have the right to hear the message, tell you the truth. Yeah. I sure would have liked to have heard it early, but yeah. That's one thing I'm stuck on. I do not believe uh, there should be a gatekeeper at the doorway of AA. I mean, there's a lot of space in AA, and I think there's uh, a lot of space to look at the exact nature of the wrong, because I don't believe they were clear about it. The ones who wrote the book, I don't. So,
Okay.
all right, next one, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks very much, guys. That was great, mate. It's our mate Luke from Birmingham. Luke, over to you, mate.
Luke.
Hey Paul. Hey. Yeah, you always reminded me of stuff. I when I take sponsees through the step 3 prayer, I used to kind of try and do it as much in the earlier days from a Buddhist perspective, because that was kind of my perspective, and what I kind of came to with that quite naturally, and it happens to kind of intersect with what you're saying, is that God, I offer myself to thee. So what we are offering is the self
Yes.
that you're talking about. And I used to kind of put it like this, that you are not that, and you can offer that to your higher power, to God. And what remains is something, but it's not that self. And your higher power, God, is capable of addressing this self. It's the higher power is objective enough to do that. It is a force that is able to do that kind of metaphysical act, really. But what remains is then an open vessel for that spirit to enter. And that was always a bit of a difficult sell, just for your average pokehead from Birmingham, you know. But with time, that the guys would practice. It's not all of them, but a lot of them would. I was just wondering how if you're working with guys, if you still do you just crack on with this stuff? Do you just just crack
No,
on?
I don't do anything. It matters to each individual situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of adapt to the situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I get that. I use the thing if you know if the guy believes he's in a house and the house is on fire, I'm going to tell him where the nearest water is. Yeah. It just matters where everyone is. And then after the fire is put out, maybe you could sit down with them and say, don't you see it strange that you're at a lot of fires? Maybe you have a role as a fire starter. You know what I mean? So basically, the first big movement of recovery to me is seeing your role in things. Because usually the emphasis from the parasite's point of view is seeing other people's role in your things. Yeah, it is. It doesn't like to see its own role. Yeah. So it puts ourselves looking at others and using them as the story that why I'm screwed is because of you or whatever. Yeah. That's a way off view. I mean, that's a fundamental, it's like facing the wrong way, so to speak. So AA brings us that first big, like, turnaround is that one, where through the inventory process, you finally see maybe your role in things. And then after that, then maybe you can look at your role and see it wasn't your role. Yeah. But it's almost like a process, because basically the parasite, as me, is just avoiding and denying tons of shit. Yeah. Because it doesn't want to be caught as the producer of all the shit that I'm living through. It's got to blame others, because if I see it as the source, it may make me a little more suspicious. Yeah. Yeah. So AA brings us to recognize our role in things, and then when that is done, then you see that which you were calling you may not be you, and that's where the real relief is available to stabilize. Yeah. But the process is, if you're avoiding tons of shit, you got to allow them to land. So we do the inventory, you do the amends. You know what I mean? You become accountable for that life that was being lived while you were under the influence, and then with the hopes that it doesn't just stop there, you see that, wow, you actually see the exact nature and the wrong. Yeah. And so the next step isn't like, okay, I own everything. The next step is, after I own everything, I see I wasn't the owner of a lot of it. Yeah. That's where the real relief, and that's an establishment. Yeah. That's when something leaves sincerely to establish. Yeah. Because now you're on to something. You've recognized the difference between you and that. Yeah. And then you can recognize its manifestations. Yeah. In comparison to your manifestations. Hey Z, go towards the front, and I think Amelia's there. I'm doing a Zoom. Yeah. So, so yes. So the way it happened with me as an action figure is I came in, my whole strategy was avoiding things at all costs. Yeah. If my right arm was bleeding, I just looked left all day. I just fucking refused to deal with anything. And I was just using the two running shoes of drinking and drugs just to keep doing it. Yeah. So I didn't want to deal with the old shit, so I made up new shit. Yeah, so it was just a string of shit, older and older, newer and newer. You know what I mean? And it seemed insurmountable, so I wasn't gonna fucking look back. I was just gonna go to the bitter end, trying to avoid this ever increasing shadow with a lot of smell, you know. But then something happened, and I was brought into recovery, and I could see, yeah, I could see that in hindsight, by me trying to make all this shit unreal, I made it as real can be. Yeah. Trying to avoid being a fraud made me fraudulent all fucking day. Yes? Do you see? Hey, honey. Hold on 1 second, folks.
Take a little.
Hey, Amelia.
So just to say to everyone, just at this juncture, that in the chat you'll see that Paul has two other satsangs on his own, which you'll find at zenbitchslap.com, and he does it every Wednesday and every Saturday. Wednesdays at about, I think it's 7 o'clock Wednesday night, and that's obviously that's Pacific time. And then on Saturday it's 1:30 in the afternoon. So if you're in Europe, that's obviously a little bit more conducive. I think it's 9:30 in the UK and 10:30 in the rest of Europe. So you know, there's something there. But I really recommend the satsangs. And just to say that we are here all the time on Tuesday and Thursday, ongoing. And it's always going to be stuff on the big book. It's going to be stuff on the 12 steps. It's going to be stuff on As Bill Sees It, everything. So, you know, fill your boots and spread the word. So back to you. Sorry, Paul. Bill? There you go.
Yeah, that was just some Jehovah Witnesses. So,
All right.
yeah. Yeah.
Give him
I
some.
have them in the backyard.
Yeah.
All right, so you see what I mean? So the first real big change in me was when I saw my role in things. That gave that brought on a light to the fourth step, man. I was so jazzed up that I could do the 4 columns. I was super clear. And then over time, I realized all of that shit I owned gave me the possibility of truly disowning it in a healthy way, not a denying, yeah, or avoiding, but recognizing truly it wasn't my shit, yeah. I'm accountable, but I'm not responsible, yeah, because I don't see the problems are of my own making. I don't. I don't believe I'm the one that's manufacturing misery. I don't see it that way. I just don't. Completely don't. Yeah. So, and this idea that I'm sharing about has infused a new light in all these steps for me. Yeah. See, I feel AA is a path to illumination, and I believe spirit is what illuminates the path, really. Yeah. And what gets illuminated is what I'm not, seriously, so that I can see it. And then I can bring it into step 6 and 7 and have that fucking energy that's been turned into whatever it's been turned into by the parasite get reconfigured. And usually it brings an ease and comfort and a presence here now. Yeah. It's not occupied by yesterday and tomorrow. It's occupied by what's happening now. I mean, truly living. And you know what? Contentment and satisfaction is an incredible state of abstinence. Yeah, in my view. Yes, yeah. So, yes. So I work with people still, and then when I do, basically sometimes you do someone a disservice to keeping them from their bottom. There's a lot of different things happen. Yeah. I think being convinced if you can live through it is fucking super valuable. Yeah. And sometimes the best way to get to that is through life. Life's going to kick your ass to a point where you're brought to a malleable reasonableness finally. Yeah. All the talking in the world sometimes can't do that. And we say something here, when someone's ready, I can't say anything wrong. When someone's not ready, I can't say anything right, really. Yeah, yeah. So, all right.
Cheers, Luke. Always good to hear from you, mate. Good to see you. Now we've got James from Belfast. Over to you, mate.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for your service. My name's James, alcoholic.
Hey.
Paul, holy shit, you are one interesting dude. I have had one of those amazing AA moments where I've been sitting listening to you and I thought to myself, where the hell did he get all that wisdom from? And I've had it a couple of times, and it dawned on me because he kept coming back here and he kept listening, and then he worked stuff out. And he's kind enough to tell a wingnut like me, like I'm not that long about him, only 5.5 years, and definitely with the whole Zoom thing, something has happened to me, and I know what it is. It's like I can choose where I want to go, and I can choose what message I listen to. And there's a much deeper level to this. And, what you were talking about is exactly what I need to listen to. And something has happened to me in the last 60 days, some spiritual change. And I was kind of thinking it's kind of what you were talking about. Like it's, just identifying with self and trying to work out what it is and stuff. And I'd never really thought about it. I heard you one day before. And ever since I heard you, it really made me think about it. And, this is just a practical question, that I've then noticed since then and since listening to you that the more that I'm engaging and trying to help other people, that the self doesn't even seem to be there. And, I'm beginning to see more and more with this program, like, and listening to Chuck C and stuff, like he says that it's as simple as helping God's kids. And, is that what it's just about? Like, is it simply that simple? The more I help God's kids, the more I'm getting out of it, but for the right reasons, not people pleasing.
Well, again, that can be more than enough for certain people, but other people, the subtlety of the parasite has set them up as a great servant of the people and shit like that, and they get bound there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
see it as, to me, of course, in the beginning, helping other people brought the attention and interest out of that orbit around Paul. But I don't see it that way anymore. I see that, I'm of service. Yeah. I'm not doing service. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a different feeling.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of people in recovery. They have an incredible resume, but they're really fucked. So they're helping 15 people. They're doing this and doing that, and then they end up in a psych ward because of the inherent underlying disease, which is the selfing. To me, yeah, because the selfing is going to claim to be the one, and it's that claiming to be the one that changes everything that comes after it. Yeah. So service can be used to reflect a bigger you than to be of help to others. It can do a lot of things. So, but no, service isn't a privilege. It's a necessity for self-centered characters like us. You have to get it. You have to have. There's got to be free samples of being out of that influence of self, and the best way to trigger one of them is service. So when you're in service, as you said, self doesn't seem to be there because self is there based on interest and attention, really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the dilemma with the selfing is whatever happens, it's going to arise afterwards and claim to be the one doing it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, uh, let's say the humility of service is you don't think you're I'm being of service, like someone who's in humility doesn't know they're in humility, in my view. Yeah. So there's a loss of interest in that which wants to be interested in being the servant for people. You know what I mean? And then a lot of times, if that gets too powerful, then you're not allowing people to have their bottom, and that's not being of service. Yeah, because now it's important for you to save them for you, not them. You know, so there's a lot of intricacies, but yeah, you can say as an expression that's a great way to go. Yeah, yeah. But again, I've witnessed something. It's more appropriate for these other talks I do on Wednesdays and Saturdays, the
Cool.
non-duality ones. But I feel there's a subtler thing going on, which is this identification as a self that is, to me, is the original addiction. The mental state is addicted to this thing it's made up, you, yeah, and it cherishes it. And whatever it's brought into contact with, it's going to use that contact to imply that imaginary one. Yeah. So it can be pretty fucking insidious in a lot of ways. But if you have the eyes to see it, it can't produce its effect. Yes? Which is nice. And we have the eyes to see it. Because the higher power is using our eyes now, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Paul.
brother.
And I'll keep coming back and listening to you. Thanks very much.
I'll
Thank
keep
you.
coming back and listen to you.
Yeah.
That's how it
Okay.
goes. Yeah. Thank you.
So,
Hey, Z,
Samantha,
you all right? All right. I had an unexpected guess, so.
get rid of the Seventh-day Adventists or whatever. Yeah, was it good? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Samantha from Yorkshire. Hey, Samantha.
Hi there. Hi, Paul. Thanks for being here. So I'm just putting it there. This is what coming to my head. So if I'm a completely different person than the self or the person that I thought I was, when did I become that false self? Or have I always been that? And did that come about because I was using and drinking? Or was I just always that?
Let's say,
That's it.
first of all, you never became it. You never became it, yeah? In my feeling, you are what you are, and that's that. Now, it appeared that you were something else, but I don't believe you've ever been something else.
Yeah.
So we come out of that illusion of being something else, and what happens when we see we're not that, we find out what we are. And usually when you find out what you are, it's always really been that way. Yeah. I don't mean your
Yeah.
personality quirks, but I mean the basis of consciousness. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't see that the head's constantly telling me I already became that which I'm not. That's what it does. It's not in, it's always in the act of becoming, but its act of becoming is stating that it already is. You know what I mean? It's a weird
Yeah.
movement. So, yeah, just don't take ourselves so seriously, which we cannot not do as self. Yeah, but when you see you're not self, you'll start taking yourself not too seriously. That's the relief. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm still trying to get a grip of all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I listen to you and I
It's
totally get it.
impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Just have an assurance you're in good hands. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And these explorations are more for they're not a journey, they're a meandering. Yeah. You're just letting new ideas come in and see what happens. I would hope that it will just allow more expression and more ease and comfort. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
And an ability to travel lighter to whatever life has in store for you.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, honey, Z's in the back. Hon. All right. I've got lots going on here, but nice to see you, Samantha.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Graham from Birmingham.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Paul. Seeing as you're in chapter 5, and you didn't actually talk about this part, but hopefully you might be able to answer this for me. So I'm considering the first paragraph in chapter 5, where they talk about those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. Now, after some multiple experiences of having immense difficulty in being honest in all my affairs, which has really been for the last 4 and a bit years, where this seems to just crop up again. Every so often it's like, I keep something to myself, and that seems to, that process just keeps repeating itself. And so maybe there's 2 questions. One, I wonder what your take is on what role the self or the bondage of self plays in that constitutional incapability. And maybe 2, that those who do not recover, which I used to see as recovery from the drink and drug problem, but I'm now seeing far more as you've helped me to see, and you've pointed out that the real recovery being from the bondage of self. Please.
Well, yeah. All right. So the way I see the constitutionally is when someone has certain deep emotional or mental, like brain problems, yeah, where they're incapable of seeing it that way, yeah. So it's constitutionally means is something physical. The brain is physical, yes. That's damage that allows they can't have that ability to be honest with themselves, yeah. They don't have a self-awareness, or whatever you want to call it. Most people have believed they've brought themselves to a constitutionally unable to be honest, but that's not the case. Yes. Yeah. So it's sort of like if you look at in the one of the forewords where it says we are 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Seemingly means it's appearing to be true or false to us. Yeah. So for some of us, it's appearing to be true that we're constitutionally unable to be honest with ourselves, but it isn't the case. And yet there are some people they are in that case. They're physically incapable of being honest with themselves. Yeah. And then what was the second one?
It was regarding so those who do not recover, and I was, having listened to you for the last.
Yes, of course. Yeah, because if there's no recovery from drinking or using, you just stop drinking and using. You know what I mean? I'm not in the act of recovering from drinking and using. It's like, I'm recovering from running. No, I stopped running. Yeah, I'm not spending next 30 years recovery from running. Maybe I'm recovering from running for so long, yes? But so, yeah, I believe recovery is about the underlying causes and conditions and really the exact nature of the wrong. Yeah.
Sure.
That's what we recover from. Why? Because really, on that level of the exact nature of the wrong, it is completely based on seemingly so. The exact nature of the wrong is completely based on how you and I see it. Yeah? The exact, just like false evidence appearing real. Yeah? One of the acronyms of fear in America, false evidence appearing real. Now, false evidence to appear real has to appear real to what's real, yes? So what's real has to seemingly fool itself to believe in false evidence. Yeah? The false evidence is false evidence. That's the fact, yeah? But it can appear to be true to us based on what's taken us over, basically, yeah? So when the parasite has taken us over, then a lot of false evidence is appearing to be true completely. Now, our whole life is based on false evidence appearing to be true. Yeah? With the primary false evidence of you, really. Yeah? Yes?
Sure.
So, hold
Yeah.
on a second. So what happens is, through this process and the allowing the higher power more and more to have more influence in us, we start seeing false evidence as false evidence. It doesn't mean the false evidence stops getting presented. It's just that you don't buy the advertisement. Yeah? You know what I mean? That's the freedom from the bondage of self. The bondage of self is really predicated on seeing a lot of false evidence as real. Seriously, yeah. That's the that's that's this bonding, yeah. It isn't so. That's the great news, yeah. You don't have to get out of self. You're not a self. That's the great news. You get out of this activity of selfing, so to speak, yeah. But there is no self to get out of. That's the beauty. Yeah, it's only appearing to be so to us. And what happens is this program can allow that appearing to be so not to appear to be so anymore. Yeah? And now you're based on more fact than false evidence, really. Yeah? That's the whole move. The movement from perhaps there's a better way, trusting something finite. When we're trusting something finite, we're believing in false evidence. Yeah? When we're trusting something infinite, we're not. That's the difference. The false evidence will still be presented, but it's not going to sway the audience. We're the audience. The spirit is the audience the mental state is playing to. Yeah? The mental state's trying to convince spirit it's a thing, to the point that spirit as a thing will try to become spiritual, which is insane. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think what I really see now is that what keeps happening is I keep trying to get out of self as self.
For
You know,
sure. That's great. That's a great,
yeah.
that's all that's going to be happening.
Mm,
That's not going to stop. You're going to see it. Yeah?
yeah.
And the seeing of it is going to produce an effect. Not that. Don't wait for that to stop, because the whole system is based on the belief it can get out of the system. That's the why I would feel this is what must have happened in the community of recovering people. They ran into this observation of self can't get out of self because they were watching it, doing it all fucking day. And that was one of the greatest rude awakenings, incredible rude awakening, which is self can't get out of self. Watch it. It's just it will just try and try and try and try and try. And what happens is when you lose interest in it, the theater of it trying gets smaller and smaller. Yes?
Okay.
That's the beauty of it. And the smaller it gets, the less effect it has on us here as the action figure. Yeah? So instead of self trying to get out of self, when it's getting pulled over by the cop and it's at a dead end alley and it decides to run down the alley with this belief that it can get out of the situation and then get caught by the cops and get my ribs broken, that stops. You're not buying that shit anymore. You know what I mean? Because you've realized self can't get out of self. It's an unbelievable realization. And now you're watching it doing exactly what it's going to keep trying to do. But you're not that, brother. That's the good news. Yeah?
Mm.
It's not you trying to get out of self. It's self trying to get out of self. Yeah?
Yeah.
When we're identified as it, we call it self trying to get out of self. But it's not you trying to get out of self. It's that which is selfing trying to get out of selfing. That's the insanity. Yeah? So you've had that's an incredible illumination. You realize, fuck, this thing's constantly trying to get out of itself. Exactly. That's great news.
It's fucking
Because a lot
determined.
of us weren't seeing that. We thought it was Paul trying to get out of something. But Paul was self. Yeah. It was bonded to self. So self was trying to get out of self. I would say, no fucking way. I was trying to get out of self. Yes, bro, that's self trying. No, it was I was trying to get out of self. No, bro, it was self. No, it was me. Yes. And then one day the light turns on and they see it. Oh, Jesus. It was Paul, aka self, trying to get out of self. Exactly. Yeah. Then all that anxiety and frustration that's produced when you think it's you trying to get out of self is dismissed because it's not you trying to get out of self. You're out of self. You see? It's beautiful. This is the power constantly revealing stuff to us. What does it reveal? It reveals a lot of false evidence as false evidence. Yeah? So now you're seeing it from other than self, and it's fucking hallelujah time. Now, see, you're maybe concerned and shit like that. I'm like fucking jumping with joy because I'm happy you've seen that. Because I see it as a great opportunity for a stabilized relief when you recognize that ain't going to stop. That's all it's doing all day. It's attempting to get out of itself as itself. You've seen the beast. Yeah? You can move on. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
To bigger and better things. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Here's Grant. Malcolm.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not that original of having the problem of trying to get out of self. I've been doing that a while. It's helpful when you talk about it being a parasite, it being other, it being like an imposter. That gives me some space between it. My current practice right now is using an inquiry question, and it puts me into awareness, and that seems to feel good for a little while until something else kind of I notice a sense of a me and a them, and it feels more dense, and then I'll usually do something else. But I spent plenty of time trying to use self to get out of self.
No, you haven't. It's been self using
Okay,
you.
self has spent plenty of time trying to get out of self. Yeah,
Yeah, it does. Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, seriously, maybe you do know, but maybe you don't. That is an incredible revelation. You've just seen the basic source code of the system. You have. You've seen how it's stirring agitation all day because you can't see the dilemma is there isn't a self to escape from. So selfing trying to escape from self can never be successful. So it's like a thwarted desire that just produces angst. Yeah? All fucking day. And then
So
we
it's
get
just
to
seen
sense all
through.
that irritability. We get to sense that irritability, restless and discontent, and we don't see what's stirring it. It's not us. We call it us. I'm irritable, restless, discontent. No, there's discontent, irritability, and restlessness being produced where you seem to be, but you're not doing it. Yeah? That's the great possibility that you're not it. Yeah? That's where the great possibility lies, in seeing what's driving you crazy as other than you, finally. And I don't mean the judge and the policeman. I mean other than you right here. Yeah? Oh, if you wanted to call it another first step, that's like the first step. Yeah? Is to see self can't get out of self, and to see that self isn't you. It was incredible launching pad. Yeah, really. I would totally honor it unbelievably to me. In hindsight, it was a very big move. When I finally got to see that thing that's like not eating its own tail, yeah, is never going to succeed. Yeah. In other words, you're not going to be there to enjoy anything. You're not going to experience what you are. You are that which is experiencing everything. You're something, you're at a point of being spirit, not at becoming spirit or hopefully ending up as spirit. You are spirit now. And that now is always now. Yeah. These simple ideas, when they're placed in the right location, produce a very reliable ease and comfort. Yes, they do.
Yes.
They, yeah,
Even when I just, disassociate from a thought, when I stop making it my thought, it's just, it's a totally different experience.
exactly.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem.
And this is gonna be just like they say that disease progresses, recovery progresses. Recovery progresses. More will be revealed. It doesn't say God is going to constantly take away what was revealed. It says God is going to constantly reveal more and more and more. That's how it goes. It's not, so. I mean, if you've been under the operating of this event called recovery, you gotta, you must have come to this. I mean, there is an assurance that you're in good hands by now. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I mean, the lower power has been put in its rightful place. It's a lower power, yeah, and the higher power is in the loftier space, and therefore you're leaning towards the higher power. Basically, you can rest assured you're in good hands. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, my basic condition now doesn't provoke anxiety. I'll tell you the truth. It doesn't. It doesn't provoke anxiety one bit. Where the
Mm-hmm.
other previous manufactured basis produced tons of anxiety all fucking day. Yeah. But that manufactured one can be undone, and then the revelation of what's really available is there. And that's not demanding much effort or thought. It's available. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Well,
Thanks,
it's
man.
good. Thanks for that, Malcolm,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, appreciate it. Asking who am I is a great way of stopping. It's like a minute. It's like a manipulated pause where you stop the both poles of the head. What you're not asks what you're not. Who am I? And then the sense of what you are becomes obvious. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's great. All right.
Wonderful. Thanks, man. Helen from the UK.
Hi, Helen, alcoholic from Stafford in the Midlands. Thank you for what you said so far. I've really been enjoying it. I'm just interested in what you said about, well, it was in reply to someone else's question, and you said that possibly a lot of us or some people can be addicted to what we see as self. This idea of this outside that and we're in love with it, and that possibly we don't let that go as soon as we let the drink and the drugs go. So do you see any correlation between that and a number of people having an emotional rock bottom after about 5 years in what we would call recovery?
Yeah, sure. Well, because while recovery gives us the possibility of recovering, so there's recovery from one level, and then there's recovery from other levels. Yeah. So one sometimes leads to the other. Yeah. So usually a lot of times you'll start crying uncontrollably, or the cathartic events will occur. That's the way of the higher power just reconfiguring all the tainted energy of the parasite. Yes. And and then there's a more availability of the sense of presence when you go through these little events. So it builds up an assurance you're in good hands. And then, yeah, there's more and more occurs. But then there's a long period where everything chills out also, Ken. Yeah?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's where, you know, the hunted, all spiritual seekers are hunting one thing: stabilization of a feeling, which is, it's the brass ring on the spiritual carousel. But what happens is you'll observe stabilization. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't be there to have it, but you'll observe, yes, that you're expressing stabilization. Yeah. Based on these, what does it say? There's certain primary facts. Like one, they talk about that there's this, everyone has a feeling of God or something. He uses some term. But yeah, those things become self evident and they become the foundation you're living from.
Hmm.
Yeah. Quite different than the shaky one you were living from before. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, yep. So, yeah. I see things that I used to think were a super drag as a great invitation, really. Now, because I've seen the results in the past little operations. So when I'm called in for another elective operation, I'm, hey, sure, an upgrade, so to speak. Yeah, your system, your programming gets upgraded. Sort of cool. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, honey. Yeah.
Right, that's great. Thank you.
Yes, Helen. And final question. We've got another question that's been written in, but one from Jono in the UK. Jono? You're unmuted. Oh, no, he's not. Yeah, you go, Jono.
Hello. Yeah, thanks everyone for making this awesome meeting. It's kind of about this getting out of self thing. I spent a lot of time racking my brains around that, and when I went through my steps 4 to 9, it come across to me, if this makes sense. I was seeking, constantly seeking, but then I realised that was a problem. I was looking for the solution from the problem, if you get me. And so when I went through, especially the step 5, the beginning of it, that's when I first felt, that's when I understood that bondage. There was space from that, and I was brought a lot more still. You know what I mean? I felt I didn't have to, because I've spent years running around looking for something. Well, that was the problem. That problem, that's what I thought was me. So just the clarity around that. And I do believe that you can't unsee this. Once I've seen it, I can't unsee it, if you get me.
Yeah.
But I know I could go back if I took my foot off the gas when we program or whatever, but because it was that big to me, it just can't be unseen. Just the relief and clarity and freedom I got from that bondage was just, well, it's life changing, isn't it? So yeah, what's your views on that?
I concur. I like the share. Yeah. See, you know, you and I are what we're actually looking for. Inherently, yeah. You and I are what we're looking for. Yes? Then there's this mental aberration that never doesn't see it that way and basically never will see it that way. To wit, you and I are not what it's looking for, basically. And so, uh, when taken over by that, we're used as transportation, basically. Yeah. And all the while being fed a narrative that we're the driver, but we're not. Yeah. Or like I'm the one who has alcoholism when actually alcoholism has us. Yeah. And so this is what we're going through, and you just shared. Uh, your share was like a glimpse of a facet of a very large sun, so to speak. Yeah, and this is what happens. Nothing can block us off from the sunlight of the spirit, but a lot of things can seem to block us off from expressing the sunlight of the spirit. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's what happens. The AA way really diminishes the mental condition because it's infected with the parasite. You can't separate the two, really. Yeah? So it
Yeah.
diminishes the emphasis on thinking and all this. Even like in the beginning, you don't think yourself into right action, you act yourself into right thinking. Yeah? So the thinking is infected, and you can't say, oh, this is clear and that's unclear. It's all muddled. So yeah, there's a loss of interest in the whole system. And then there's a gaining of interest in other possibilities, which aren't really rooted in self-centeredness. Yeah, let's call them centeredness. And then now something else is driving you, and you know the tree by its effects. Yeah, yeah, and so it's never been a leap of faith in AA for me. It just proves the goods all the time. Yeah, you're going to be changed if you submit yourself to this program. You're going to be changed. That's the deal. You're not going to be changing shit. You're going to be changed. Yeah? And that change is going to be directed by a higher power, so it's going to turn into growth. It's not going to be chaotic change like I did every day as a drug addict, yeah? Trying to change my feelings every fucking second, changing where I was staying, moved to one hotel to another, changing this, changing where I was going to sleep, all that. No, this is going to be directed change. It's going to be growth, yeah?
Yeah.
And what wasn't seemingly solid will become solid, and what was seemingly so solid will be dispersed, yeah? And perhaps there'll be a different way, and you're the expression of that, and so am I, and so are a lot of the people here, yeah, which is awesome. So if there was a question in there, I didn't get it, so I just shared. I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
share.
Yes,
Yeah,
John.
John. Take it easy, brother.
Yes, mate. So Paul, Kaiser would like to come back in. He's written me a question, but I think it's probably better it just comes from him. Is that okay? You got one time for one more?
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I'm gonna save it for another time. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, mate. Okay. Well,
All
that's
right,
it.
Kaiser.
Okay. Well, that's it for another Tuesday then. So over to you, Paul. You want to say goodbye?
Yeah, I'd like to thanks everyone. Really, I appreciate everybody, and just watch the head how it tries to use everything or anything, this message, to be divisive and to it just can't let things lie. So yeah, I'm just happy to have this platform, and yeah, I don't know. That's about it. We have talks all week. I think David said it. We have another talk about it that's framed in another topic called non-duality on Wednesday night and Saturdays. Saturday 1:30, Wednesday at 7 Pacific time, where we can go into certain, to me, more into the original addiction, which is the mental state's addiction to this idea of being the doer, the thinker, the feeler. Yeah. Sometimes it's not completely appropriate in a recovery framing. So, yeah, if you want to join there, it's interesting. So, yeah, just thanks everybody else. I can see everyone. How you doing, John, over there? Jonathan, nice to see you. We got Therese again. Nice to see you, Therese. Carl, always good to see you. Sonny, Paula, Johans, James, of course, fantastic. Sue D, Jono from UK. We got G, Malcolm, thank you, Malcolm. Keith, fantastic, you moved outside. Samantha, Erica, beautiful doll-like thing there. Let me see. And everyone else, thanks for it, Helen. Rob from UK, Luke, as always. Kurt, fantastic to see you. Thanks for sticking with us, Kurt. Appreciate it. Paul, Dimitri, fantastic. Kristen, Kaiser, good to see you. We got Mike Z, he left the room already. Alina, Kurt again, Nikki, nice to see you, Nikki. Dennis, Daz, my main man. David, thanks. David did all this. He set all this up. And with Michael, the reason why we can have these. So if you're pissed off, get pissed off at David. Yeah. And yeah, and just a pleasure. Thank you so much. And
Thank you,
yeah,
Paul.
yeah.
We're going to be hanging around for 15, 20 minutes afterwards. If you want to have a chat about what Paul spoke, or we can just hang around, have a coffee or a tea or whatever you want to do.